So over the last 6 months or so, I've had a lot of people ask me to create a video in which I showcase the top books in my collection. And part of what I've always struggled with regarding this type of request is what is the criteria? What are the criteria that should be applied to that type of list? Is it based upon value? Is it based upon the potential of the books to increase in value? Is it based upon movies and TV shows? Is it about nostalgia? So instead of overthinking it, what I decided to do was to basically create a video and show you a handful of books that I have in my collection that I think are really cool. And as I show those books, I'll talk about why these books actually made the list. I will tell you that I'm going to show these books in no particular order. There's going to be no rhyme or reason to it other than that is the order in which they were stacked on the desk. If you enjoy this type of video, I want to encourage you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and that way you won't miss out on any of the content that comes out from my channel several times a week. With that said, let's get to the video.
Tired of paying 10%, 15% or more to sell your cards, comics, and digital collectibles? How does 1% sound? Too good to be true? Well, not anymore. MySlabs.com is the web's premier user-driven marketplace for buying and selling slabbed cards, sealed wax, and now slabbed comics and digital collectibles. So the next time you're forced to pay 10% or more to sell something from your collection, head over to MySlabs.com and join the 1% revolution.
Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. As I mentioned in that brief intro, I have some books that are sitting here on the desk, and I'm going to show these books and I'm going to talk about why these are some of my favorite books. And I will tell you for a fact that there's a lot of different reasons why these books actually made the list. And as I mentioned, I'm going to kind of talk through a little bit of that. The very first book that I want to show is actually part one of 4 books. I'm actually going to show you all 4 books. But this is Deathlock issue number 1. And I do believe that this book was actually released in 1990. And this was the first solo series featuring Deathlock. Really awesome cover right here. And I did not know about this series until maybe a year ago. And I'm not quite sure how I became aware of it, but it was probably about a year ago that I first became aware of it. I read it and I thoroughly enjoyed the series. Back in the day, I collected the ongoing series with the wonderful silver cover back in 1991. But again, it wasn't until much later that I became aware of this title. This is book number 2 right there. Probably not as great a cover as issue number 1. Number 3 is probably a little bit better than issue number 2. And then I would say that issue number 4 is probably second. This is a fantastic mini-series. It is the story of a guy that has a lot of morals, right? He is a family guy. He's a husband. He's a father. He has morals, and he literally finds himself in the body of a killing machine. And this is the story of him dealing with the fact that he's a family man and he's trapped in this machine. And it is a really wonderful story arc. And again, at the time that I read this, I had no full appreciation that there were multiple versions of Deathlock. I honestly did not know that, but this is a wonderful story. I reread it again recently, and I'm purposefully being cryptic here because I don't want to give it all away. I want you guys to check it out because this Deathlock series from 1990 is honestly really good in my opinion. The next book that I want to show you is a slabbed book, and this is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 50. And I probably should have taken it out of the plastic, but here we are. We are here. The plastic's on it. It's fine. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 50. I believe that this is a book that shows up on a list of one of the most iconic comic book covers of all time. And this book is on the list not necessarily because of that. It's on the list because I love Spider-Man. Red is my favorite color. And I personally slid this book across the table to Stan Lee shortly before he passed away. And I was at Silicon Valley Comic-Con, slid it across the table. He smiles a little bit. He signed the book. And that is part of the reason why this book is really awesome and is special to me. It's a great story, great cover, but it was also the first time that I had ever met Stan Lee. And that, to me, is really huge. Like, I can literally hear Stan's voice in my head. That's how much of a Stan Lee fan I am. So this is a really cool book right here. I went on to give the book to a facilitator who actually had John Romita Sr. sign the book for me as well. So again, a 2-time signed book. Definitely a cool book to have in the collection. The next book that I'll show you is also associated with Stan Lee. This is a book that his wife encouraged him to do. At least that's the way that the story goes, right? Stan was thinking about quitting comics. His wife encouraged him to do a book the way that he wanted to do it, and he created the Fantastic Four. And this is a book that I picked up probably a little over a year ago. I picked this book up. This is one that I wanted for a while, and I was very pleased to have picked this book up. It is a 2.5 with cream to off-white pages. Definitely not the highest of grades, but definitely a cool book to have in the collection. And I absolutely love the cover art on this book. I love the story. And this, to me, is a classic. This is a classic Silver Age comic. And as I've mentioned in other videos, this is what, in my mind, comic book collecting is about, right? This book right here. So that is why that one is mentioned. This next book is a quirky one. It's a quirky book. And if you've never watched my videos before, you're probably going to struggle with why this book is on the list. But it is a special book, and I actually have multiple copies of this book. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 110, the first appearance of Martin Blank, aka the Gibbon. So you may have heard people talk about the Gibbon Gang, and honestly, the Gibbon Gang is a very much an organic thing that came out of an offhand comment that I made about this book a couple of years ago, and it has honestly taken on a life of its own, and I've embraced it. I've just leaned into it, and I've embraced it. Amazing Spider-Man issue number 110 is a special book for so many reasons, and I've actually created an homage to this for another comic that I actually put out. So it is definitely a cool book. It's an interesting, quirky story. If you've never read that book, Martin Blank is a tragic character, and so he appears in issue number 110, 111, and then he appears much later in like Marvel Apes, and then later on in Amazing Spider-Man issue 18.HU. I do believe that was the issue in which he died. And so definitely a tragic character from his first appearance until his very last appearance. Definitely a tragic character. This next book is technically not a book. It's actually a graphic novel. And this was an AOK that was given to me by a guy named Johnny, who is no longer associated with the channel, but he gave this to me probably 2 to 3 years ago. I read this book and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I remember sitting on the sofa actually reading this book. And this is actually a graphic novel, and I'm not a graphic novel kind of guy, but I read this one and was blown away by a death in the family. And this is it's an amazing story. Amazing story by Jim Starlin, who happens to be one of my favorite writers. I think he's an incredible writer. He did some wonderful stuff for Marvel, specifically around the cosmic landscape that I enjoyed. This is a wonderful story. And I think I have some of the individual books, but this graphic novel is one that I went ahead and put in a plastic bag and actually stuck it in my obscure comic book bin just because I enjoyed the story that much. The next book that is one that I want to show you is just a cool book. And some may wonder why I'm showing this book versus another book, and I'll actually explain that here in just a moment. This is Giant Size X-Men issue number 1. And this was one of the first major keys that I purchased when I came back into comics back in 2017, 2018. And I think I picked this one up in 2018. Excellent grade for this book. And it was the most that I think I had ever spent at the time when I purchased it. But this book is on the list because this is my version of the X-Men. This is the X-Men team that I know and love. I have X-Men issue number 1. Fantastic book. Not a great read, but a fantastic book. But this one is my X-Men team. It is the one that I grew up with. And this story is also really amazing. I think the story in here is awesome. I think that the artwork is awesome. This one definitely has a special place in my heart. And this case is amazing. Huge case for that book. To the point of X-Men, the very next book that I want to show that is near and dear to me, and this is truly a nostalgia play, is this one. This is X-Men issue number 271. And you guys have probably heard me, if you've been watching my content, you've probably heard me talk about this book before. This is, again, 271. And this book is my original copy from back in the day. I remember as a teenager laying in my bed in the basement in Oak Park, Michigan, and I read this book over and over and over again. This cover with Cameron Hodge and Wolverine is just etched. It is etched in my memory. Like, I can close my eyes and picture this cover. That's how much I stared at this book. That is how much I read this book. And this is truly a nostalgic play, but the whole, Extinction Agenda, Cameron Hodge thing that was going on, I was enthralled. And I was captivated by these stories that were being told and illustrated by the incredibly talented Jim Lee, who remains one of my favorite artists to this day. The next book that I'll show is a book that I picked up. I picked this book up from Golden Age Guru, and I actually bought it during a live auction. He showed some books in a preview video, and they were expensive. And I reached out to him and I said, "Do you have a poor man's copy? Do you have a poor man's copy of this book?" He said he did not have one, but he had a buddy that actually had one that potentially would bring the book to the live sale. And sure enough, that buddy showed up and he brought the comic. My wife was sitting on the sofa next to me when I purchased this book, and much to my chagrin, she heard how much I paid. But this is Amazing Fantasy issue number 15. I am a Spider-Man fan. This is the ultimate grail book for a Spider-Man fan, and it is amazing. It is a 1.0, has a detached cover, and I don't care because it's a dope book. And this is a poor man's version. I am thankful. For this book. This is what dreams are made of, man. I'll tell you, I love some Spider-Man. I would love one day to upgrade this book. I remain hopeful that I will be able to do it because I would like to get a nicer copy of it, of this first appearance of Peter Parker, Amazing Spider-Man. I still smile to this day whenever I look at this book because years ago, it was a dream. It was a dream for me to be able to hold that book, much less own that book. And now it is here. And I am very thankful that I was able to make some magic happen and was able to secure that book. And I'm very, very proud of that book. This last book, and technically not the last book, second to last book, is a book that I want to upgrade as well. I want to upgrade this book as well. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 33, and it is called Final Chapter. This is a wonderful moral story about never giving up, about a man having to sacrifice and to do things that are difficult because they need to be done for his family. And I know a lot of folks don't like comics that have morals. I personally appreciate those books that have morals and values and these stories that go beyond just the colored page. They actually go to real life. And so this is one that is on the list because I just think that it is an incredible story. Spidey is trapped under some machinery and he needs to get something to Aunt May. And it is him going through some stuff in order to do what has to be done for his family. And I don't know a father out there, a husband out there that does not appreciate that sentiment. That is why this book is on the list. Powerful, powerful book. And it needs to be upgraded because that is not necessarily the best copy. But anyway, it's in the collection. The last book that I'm going to show you is my most recent purchase. And this is a book that I waited a long time to get. It was a hard book to find at an affordable price in a good condition. And I am pleased to have been able to acquire it and add it to my collection. This is amazing. Amazing. It is amazing. But it is Incredible Hulk issue number 1. And I read this story a couple of years ago and was honestly impressed by the story. I had made a lot of assumptions about this character based upon maybe some things that I had read later or just some things that I had heard or things that were in my head. Then I read the story and it was actually a pretty awesome story. And so this was the last book that I needed to acquire in order to feel like I had a respectable collection. And so for several different reasons, this book is very important to me, and that is why it is on the list. I can tell you for a fact that there are so many other books that I could have shown in this video, books that have higher values, books that have some nostalgia associated with them. But these are the ones that I decided to pull out of the collection and showcase. And I hope that you enjoyed this review of some of these comics. And as I mentioned at the beginning, if you like this type of content, I definitely want to encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And that way you won't miss out on any of the content that comes out. If you enjoyed this video, I definitely want to encourage you to go ahead and hit the thumbs up button and leave a comment behind as well. And if you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.